What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Bombs and Birdies podcast. And today I'm joined again by my buddy Logan. And today, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit before about speed and how it's simply one tool in your toolkit of skills as a golfer, right? I think a lot of people summarize, it's almost like, it's a tale as old as time. Movies show you like the guy who hits it really far and like Happy Gilmore, right? Versus the finesse player. And it's always sort of this battle. But I think what we need to talk about is like, it's not just like distance or accuracy. They're both simply tools that you have in your bag, right?
Correct.
So if you had to describe like, distance as sort of a tool, as one part of an overall, complete package game, how important is that? Is it 20%? Is it 10% in your opinion?
Well, from a statistical standpoint, the further you hit it, the less accurate you have to be.
Right.
So do they go hand in hand? Yes. I think that each part of the game has its percentage. If I was to label it from a percentage standpoint, I would be biased only because I've built my game around that aspect. But if we start looking at guys that are, it's tough. Like, do you want to compare to the PGA Tour or you want to compare to the average Joe?
Well, hold up. I want to actually rewind a minute here because you said something that seems so counterintuitive. You said that the further you hit it, the less accurate you have to be. I would think the opposite, I think most people would think, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will register that as like, well, if I hit it 300, but I slice it 80 yards in the trees, that's not worth it to me.
You're going to hit it further in the trees, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So if we change nothing mechanically,
okay.
You're now a 5 handicap, but like, let's just use the example of you're a 10 handicap, you shoot in the low 80s every now and then, and you hit it maximum 240, 250 off the tee. I would say that's probably pretty average for that type of, they swing it around 100, 105 miles an hour.
Okay.
You're probably poking it out there about 240, 250 maximum. Okay. If we change nothing about your game mechanically, and I just give you 10 more miles an hour worth of clubhead speed.
Yeah.
So you're going to hit it in the trees the same amount you already do.
Yes.
And you're going to hit it in the fairway just as much as you already do.
Okay.
Okay. But now I've given you, for the better part, depending on the equation of like ball speed, in and around 3 yards per ball speed, or every mile an hour ball speed, you're looking at almost like, let's just say for an example, you're looking at 20, 25 yards off the tee.
Okay.
So now you go from hitting it 240 to 260, possibly 270.
Okay.
Like, that's a very big difference.
Yeah.
And statistically speaking, and again, there are going to be outliers because I know I'm going to get so much hate in the comments for this. But there's going to be outliers where like, oh, well, this guy hits a 240 and he's a scratch golfer. 100%. Like, you're going to get guys that are world class at different aspects of their game that make up for that.
Yeah.
But if I was going to give you 20 more yards off of the tee, solely because, and I change nothing about you mechanically, now maybe the opportunity to go for a par 5 and 2 comes up.
Right.
Where that never used to be in the cards before.
Oh, there's so many golfers I play with that, a lot of them, it's like, the par 5s are something that they wouldn't really even imagine hitting into.
Right.
It's like just a 3-shot hole for them. Well, those are supposed to be the easiest holes.
That's where, or they have to hit like so much lumber.
Yeah. But it's so much harder because if you have to hit 3 good shots now instead of just 2 on a, like, I think when you see players enter golf and maybe they're in the higher range, like 20 to 30, a lot of golfers, they intuitively just look at a par 3 and they go, that should be easier. It's like a short hole.
Right. But you have less shots to get in the hole.
Do.
So as an example.
So as a high handicapper, I think it's easier, but as you get better,
so
that
like
needs to change, right?
With a par 5, you can hit one bad shot and you still have 4 shots to be able to make it. If you hit one bad shot in a par 3, you're almost kind of screwed, right? So it's not, and that goes all the way up to the highest level. So like if you hit a bad tee shot, you have the chance to recover and still hit the green regulation and possibly make birdie.
Yeah.
Whereas on a par 4, if you get out of position, you're kind of playing for bogey.
Right.
Like for the most part, depending on where you are, you hit it out of play or you hit it in a bad position, you don't have as many shots to make up for the bad shot you just hit. Whereas with a par 5, like that's why I play personally. If you were to take my stats over the course of the last 3 years, I have played the par 5s lower than I ever have, like almost to the point where it's like a 4.5. So I'm almost birdieing them like almost 80% of the time.
Yeah.
So like versus and then if I can manage my way around, again, not making more birdies, but if there's an average of 4 par 5s around, I'm having a good drive, like it's going to be a fluctuating scale, but let's say I have a good driving day, I'm going to be able to put myself in a position to birdie 4 to the 4 par 5s with said distance. And then as long as I can just hang on and not make big numbers on everything else, it will all kind of come down the wash. So let's say I birdie all 4 par 5s. I play the par 4s 50%, and then I play the par 3s kind of the same thing, like 50%.
Yeah.
Like now I went from like let's say I shoot like 76, 77 in that scenario because I'm like bogeying half the par 4s and I'm bogeying half the par 3s, and then I birdie all 4 or even 3 out of the 4 par 5s. Like that's making up for some of the bad mistakes that I've had. But if I don't even have the ability to get my scoring average to that point via distance, which is again a factor, but if I don't have the ability to do that, then those par 5s go away, and then I also play the par 4s half average, half bad, par 3s half average, half bad. And then because the par 5s are so long, now I'm playing those over par because I can't even get myself in a good position.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where the score is. It has nothing to do with like, oh, I need to hit it closer, I need to putt better. When you get to the point where like if you want to be a scratch player, yeah, those things need to come into account. But for the average Joe, like the average guy who plays maybe like once or twice a week, doesn't really practice that much, distance is going to be the most important statistic that is going to move the needle. Because I've had guys come into my coaching program and they say the same thing and they're always so skeptical. And I'm like, listen, the first thing we can work on is getting you into grid shape first and foremost and giving you at least 20 extra yards. Because if I can do that, it goes not only 20 extra yards off the tee, but you're also getting at least one less club into holes. So the more loft you have, the less spin loft you're going to have left and right.
Yeah.
You're not going to hit it as crooked. And there's a reason why if you hit a bad driver, it's so wayward. But if you hit like a wedge bad or like an iron bad, it's not as
so
dramatic.
Bad.
It's because of loft. So driver is the hardest club to hit. So if you can get better with that and be able to add more speed to put yourself in positions to optimize what you're already doing. If I just did nothing mechanically with your swing and you're like, I'm a 10 handicap and I gave you 20, 30 more yards off the tee, you're going to be a single digit just from that stat alone.
Yeah. So that was a lot.
That was a lot. But
that was passion right there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I mean, I know what you're saying. Like, obviously the shorter club you have in, the tighter dispersion, right? It's like, I think if we could simply sum that up, if you're hitting your driver further, like what do you have a higher chance of accurately hitting the green with, a 7-iron or a 3-wood?
Exactly.
It's a 7-iron.
And that's the only point you need to say. That's it.
Well, I think if you look at most golfers, I would actually go as far to say that distance is the single limiting factor for almost every golfer.
100%. Even at the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing guys and you're seeing who was the guy who just won?
I didn't watch.
Okay, so the gentleman who just won, only because I know this because Mike Carroll, Fit for Golf, is his trainer. Okay, and he went from 125th driving average, or 125th either driving, I think it was driving average, like total distance, and over the course of the last 2 years, he went to 21st.
Yeah, that's insane. That
right?
difference,
So why is he gaining speed? If it's not relevant, then why are the guys at the top level trying to do better?
Yeah.
Because they know.
Yeah, and I would say it's a smaller edge even for them. It's a bigger difference for the amateur golfer.
Yes.
And the reason why, like I look at a lot of players and, at your club, you're going to have the guys who play, 5 days a week. Maybe they're retired or something like that, right? You're going to have your Joes who come out on a Thursday night and they just play their men's league. Like that's their whole thing, right? They are going to be spending the time on the golf course. They're going to have played these greens a million times. Like a lot of these guys don't even get down and read the green.
They're like, I know which way it breaks.
They play the same shots every week. And so those things are all mostly settled out. They have their go-to bump and run that they hit. And they've got it really figured out around that course. Some courses, maybe it's this shot. Some courses, maybe it's a bump and run. They've got all that stuff figured out. They've got the touch. They've got the feel. What's the thing holding them back, especially with age and gaining weight and these different things?
Yeah.
You only hit it shorter and shorter.
And guys are stubborn and they have huge egos and they won't move up.
Yeah.
So
and it's the quickest thing to improve too, because your golf game, you've played so many rounds in your life. You love this game. You've putted, you've done all these things. Your feel is pretty damn good. You could make it better, yes, but it's going to take a lot of work to make it better. Mm-hmm. One thing you haven't worked on, most people, their strength.
Almost everybody.
Yeah.
Right?
And the noob gains are so fun. I remember when I got into fitness and I was training for the first time. And you're benching like one plate, and then within like a year, you're like double.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy how good you can get in a short amount of time.
And a lot of people, a lot of guys specifically, will just be like, they'll use the lazy answer, and they'll be like, oh well, I'm getting slower, I'll just move up a deck.
Right.
But why?
Yeah.
They're like, well, I'm too old. I might as well move up a deck.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, okay, so rather than doing anything remotely close to like getting yourself either back into shape or taking care of yourself to add life longevity, not even just for your golf game, you'd rather just like, oh, I'll just move up a deck and then my handicap stays the same.
And I think that's what happens when you push this down the line for like 20 years.
Yes.
You say like, no, I'm not going to get in shape. I'm not going to lose weight. I'm not going to build strength, right? And like realistically, I think the thing that would surprise a lot of people is that if they're doing the things that you suggest, it's going to take them even less time than what they think.
Oh, 100%.
Like you go to the range, you beat balls for an hour, and then you go home. Did you get better? Maybe, I don't know. You might be frustrated even because you were hitting it like shit, right? You're trying to blast the driver and you can't do it. Meanwhile, if you go and do some of these drills for like 5 minutes and then work on a bit of your strength, which the cool thing about that is it's going to spread into other parts of your life.
100%.
Right?
100%.
Like your girlfriend or wife, like they're going to be super impressed and be like, whoa, what's gotten into you, right?
Yeah.
It's going to make you feel better, less back pain, like all these other things you experience.
Yeah, and I think even just to add to that is a lot of guys will be like, oh, well, I'm very foggy, like on the last couple holes, I can't keep the round together. That doesn't necessarily have anything, like part of it is your nutrition, but like it doesn't really have much to do with like your actual golf game. It's you're not physically, I always will refer back to this, you're not physically at a point where you're neurologically like at the ready, because golf is very mental.
It's so mental.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you can put yourself in stressful situations, aka under duress in the gym, and be exercising, your test levels are going to increase, everything is going to go up. So you're going to be more high alert. You're not going to be as brain fogged because your diet's going to improve. So everything is going to improve when you start working on yourself first. And that's why I'm always like, listen, like, let's optimize what you look like. Let's optimize how you feel, and let's optimize how strong you are. Because at the end of the day, you can do as many med ball throws against a wall as you want. You can do as many stretches and mobility exercises as you want. You can do as many box jumps as you want. And don't get me wrong, I include that stuff inside of my coaching program, but a lot of it is raw strength.
Right.
Because number one, that's going to be something that's going to burn the most fat, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Doing endless amounts of Peloton rides or cardio is not going to do it.
Yeah.
So being able to be stronger as an individual, and especially as a golfer, is so paramount, because it's like, I don't know how many times I've walked up or played with golfers or even in our friends circle, whatever, and be like, what are you doing? Like, you're not like you don't even, and I'm not saying you have to like squat 400 pounds and deadlift 500. I'm not saying that. But if you can get, but for relative sake, if you can get stronger in relation to you, like that is going to be so dramatic in your golf game. And I think people are slowly starting to catch on to it, because it's like, oh, well, I just need the next best mobility exercise. I just want to stay flexible. I just want to do this. So it's like, well, if you lose body weight, you lose body fat, and you actually get stronger, like your joints improve, you feel better, like you sleep better, you're more cognizant, and your cognitive ability is just that much better. And it's like, the people are still looking at it all wrong. And I know even you, like you had a big transformation with that as well. And even going from a 12 to a single digit cap, and like, we did what, one drill, and you just kept going out.
Kept working on that drill. And then we started working on the short game a little bit, learned some secrets there. And I got in good shape. You know what I mean? Like I went through a transformation from, in like the 2 years, I went like 206 to 163 to back up to like 190 right now, you know,
but like a good 190.
A good 190, right? And that strength, like the stamina, the skills, like the habits that I've had, and the nutrition that I've learned has like really helped too to fuel your body throughout your round, right? You know, not get that fatigue in the last few holes where like it's so painful to go through, have a great round, and then you just start falling off the rails at the end. But you're not just falling off the rails, you're hangry falling off the rails. And things are like pissing you off, right? And you're just like so close, and you see that number in sight. It could be like a 79 or whatever your goal is. You're like, oh, like today's going to be the day. And then you hit a terrible shot because you're not focused, or because you hit terrible shots. Like it happens in golf.
And it's just like there's such, like, at least for me, being as competitive as I am, there's such a mental advantage to that too. Like if I step out onto the tee for the I've gotten this over the last 2 years, because I've gotten, like, at least on social media, like guys have seen me get super strong and in relation, and like, oh, like he squats 400 pounds, he deadlifts 500 pounds, like at sub 200 pound body weight, and they'll step up and they're just like, who is this guy? You like, you know what I mean? So it's like, if I can have, that's almost, I treat it as like the Tiger effect. Like Tiger had to do so much, and people don't know this, but Tiger had to do so much work around moving correctly in golf tournaments to not disrupt other players. So he's one of the only, and Bryson talks about this too. He's one of the only players, and the only reason I say this is because Bryson talked about it. I listened to it on a podcast a little while ago. They played together.
Yes.
Tiger and Bryson played together at I think it was at Torrey Pines, and they went off the back nine, and it was, he's so stoic, but like when Bryson hits a good shot, it was like, you know what I mean? And then Tiger hits a good shot, no matter where it goes, and people go ballistic.
They're yelling
so
in the hole.
when he moves,
Okay.
if he doesn't move the correct way, or he takes a step when he shouldn't, like he's had to play his whole career based around not disrupting other players by the way that he moves.
Oh my God.
So like to be able to have that type of an effect on the game and like be that respectful is so mentally taxing as well. So like you need a nap after that. Like just that alone, right? You have like 50,000 people watching your
Who's nervous in front of a crowd of 100 people? Everyone.
Everyone, right?
Or when you got to hit a shot just in front of the guys who you're playing through.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And they're just four dudes drinking beer on a Saturday afternoon, and you're like nervous to hit a shot in front of them. Now imagine like in those crowds and everything. That's great.
Well, and you've seen Tiger's like workout regimen. It was insane. He would like get up, eat breakfast, run 4 miles, go to the gym, then go to the driving range, chip, play 9 holes. Like his day was like, and then at the end of the day, he even said he would play tennis or basketball at the end of the day.
Yeah, which is crazy, right? And that's just like that athlete. It's almost that childlike mindset where when you're a kid, you'd get up, go to school, play sports, you know, have hockey after school or whatever you play. And then you go over to your friend's house and you shoot hoops or you do whatever. And it's just like,
you never want the sun to go down.
Yeah, it's that sort of like that true athletic sort of almost like a childlike state of being, right?
Yeah.
But you mentioned Tiger's workout being like really intense, and then we watch like Full Swing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is for TV or what. You know, the guys obviously have like tournaments that weekend. How much are they working out before a tournament, and what are they actually doing? Like I saw a lot of just like ball tosses.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just like staying limber, and I think a lot of trainers, they don't want their guys to get stiff, they don't want them to get tight, and there's this whole stigma around like don't build too much muscle because like you're gonna get too stiff and not be able to rotate. You are not going to be able to build too much muscle. I'm going to tell you right now. Like,
silly.
And the reason I say that is because you're not willing to work hard enough in order to do that,
right? And
the amount of food you're going to have to consume, and on top of that, even if you were to do that, you're probably still going to need to take a decent amount of performance-enhancing drugs to get to that point. I know the world's strongest man that is 325 pounds, and he's lean for a 320, and he still can swing 140 miles an hour.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like
it's not. Oh yes, you can't be too big.
You can't realistically be that big because first of all, I'm going to tell you right now, and it'll ruffle some feathers, but you won't be dedicated enough to do that. I've dedicated my whole life to getting, or at least not my whole life, but I've dedicated the last decade to getting strong and getting bigger, and like I'm still 186 pounds. Like I'm not massive. Do I have more muscle? 1,000%. I've never taken a drug in my life, nor will I. But at the end of the day, like you are not going to get as big as you think, and you will not lose mobility because you don't have the drive to do that, and you'd have to dedicate the rest of your life solely to that.
Yeah, I love that Arnold Schwarzenegger had a quote. He's like, people, when they tell me that I look too big, he's like, or that they don't want to look like me, they'd be like, Arnold, like I don't want to look like you.
Perfect, because you won't.
Perfect, you never will.
Yeah, 100%. And I think people have like lost sight of like, oh, if I do a bunch of squats, my legs are going to get too big. Or if I do, like, do you have any idea how long it would take to get yourself to a point where like you can't walk sideways through doors?
And then what's the solution for being too big?
I don't know.
You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, you don't have to do it. Right? Yeah, I guess.
Just like back off, right?
Yeah, but it's like you're just people. You will, especially in like your 40s, like you don't have the lifespan or the testosterone to be able to sustain gaining that much muscle that quickly.
Oh, these big guys, they're starting when they're in their teen years,
100%.
and then they're going, and then like maybe they reach these gargantuan sizes in like their late 20s, early 30s. That's like over a decade of work when your testosterone's at its highest.
Yeah, and it's like you're just not going to get as big as you think you're going to get.
Now, that being said, whatever goal you do have for getting bigger and stronger is actually way easier and more achievable than you would think.
I also agree.
Like the difference between in your first year, if you're like benching like that one plate, you can get to 2 plates like probably benching once a week.
I agree.
You could get to 2 plates if you do it correctly. If you know what you're doing, if someone's guiding you.
And then it just slowly starts to kind of dissipate. Like your gains, like at least for me, like it was the same thing. Like when I went through my first like weightlifting cycle or squat cycle, bench cycle, whatever, like I was able to put like 40, 50 pounds on my lifts in a year. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen anymore.
No,
right? Like I'm fighting for 2.5 to 5 pound PRs in like 6-7 months. And I have to dedicate like 4 or 5 days a week in the gym. So I'm not necessarily looking to put on size per se, but focusing on trying to build muscle is going to be way better off for you than just crushing. Because I know a lot of guys that come to me and they're like, oh, I just like sit on the Peloton for 20 minutes a day and like I want to be able to stay flexible and stay limber. I'm like,
yeah,
that's not going to do it.
Yeah, it's not the way to go. No. And I think they get confused. They see a guy like you and you're working out 7 days a week so that you can get like a 5% gain.
Right.
Or then you could look at someone who is like more beginner, like someone like me, where it was like I started off and maybe I'm going to the gym like twice a week,
right,
but then I like double my strength in a year.
Right.
And it's like it's that sort of like inverse thing, right? Where the longer you do it, the more you have to sort of put into it.
Yeah.
But I also think you're seeing more trainers like yourself and there's like even like a Greg O'Gallagher and guys like that too are like more shifting towards like you don't actually have to work out as many times.
Yeah, you don't. There's an enormous diminishing return. Like depending on what your goals are, like there's an enormous diminishing return if you go more than like 4 or 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Like you're just burning the candle at both ends because people aren't willing to sustain eating the amount of food you need to just to recover. And on top of that, being able to sleep long enough to where you can recover. So like you have the 40-year-old guy that wants to lose 30, 40 pounds, like has a family, a full-time job, has kids, like, and wants to play golf and wants to be good. It's like, well, let's set things in realistic expectation here. Like if you're going to the gym 3 days a week, enormous win.
Oh, huge,
and then if you're able to practice to 5 to 10 minutes a day in your house, or if you're able to get to the range once, maybe twice a week, maybe you play once on the weekend, like, dude, that is enough. And I think in my opinion, there's like 5 or 6 drills you need to do for the rest of your life in order to get better at golf.
Yeah.
And Ben says this too.
To where most people, and that would get you to a very elite level.
You could get to a single digit handicap easily if you did like literally like these 5 drills. I'm not going to go into them right now, but like there's not very many. And I think a lot of coaches overcomplicate how to teach golf in order to make themselves sound smarter and to retain the client long term. Because they're like, oh, rather than fixing the root problem, let me fix something little, come back and see me in a week.
Right.
Fix something little, come back and see me in a week. And the reason I say that is because I was a victim to this. Whereas like when I came out of college, I played some of the best golf of my life, and it was like nobody ever took a look at nobody ever said anything about my posture, ever.
Right.
Nobody ever said anything about fixing my grip. Nobody ever said anything. So it was always me tinkering. And I was I struggled just as much as everybody else, where it was like, I want to be able to get better, but like the big root problems are the issue. And like I think I've had 4 or 5 coaches in my lifetime, and nobody. And the reason why I love Ben so much is because number one, he simplifies it, but he's also a little bit of a nerd, which is great. But he was able to fix like 10 years worth of shit that was going on with me that was like, why didn't anybody ever talk about this? Why didn't anybody ever fix? And it's like this the most minute thing.
Yes.
And I was like, well, I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I didn't know any better.
Yeah. That's the thing. If you find the right thing, it accelerates your progress by 10 times, right? A lot of people out there, I think, are maybe that guy who they got a target to break, whether it's 90 or 80. And it's like, why can't I do it? And the funny thing is, when you find out the answer, which is specific for you, not everyone's got the same answer.
Right.
But when you find that key, which you're able to identify, is like, that's it.
Yeah.
All I had to do is that.
Yeah.
And it's like a 5-minute-a-day drill.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go, do this drill every minute in the backyard.
Yeah.
And then, holy crap, I actually did it.
And like, and I was winning too.
Yeah.
Like I was winning at the, like, not the highest level, but like I was winning. Like I have 2 college back-to-back national championships. Like I've won 10 times as an amateur. Like I've won in college. I've won professionally. Like I was winning doing this stuff. Yeah. So I figured out a way to do it and know my tendencies under pressure. But like I would have never got there by myself. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'll just, golf coaching's too expensive and this, that, and the other. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of shitty coaches out there.
Yeah.
But finding the right one is super important, and it can accelerate your golf career, life, playing ability tenfold.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not even close. Like if I tried to figure it out on my own, I would suck.
Golf coaching is expensive. A personal trainer is expensive. If you can tie them both into one, it becomes a lot more affordable. Mm-hmm. But I think the part that really justifies all that is when you take that next look at it, and it's like, you love golf because it's a microcosm of your life.
Yeah.
And if you can find a way to enjoy that thing in your life more, to play more freely,
Yeah.
to have more control over it, right? And achieve in this area of your life, it branches out into all these other aspects, right? Your
100%.
career, your relationships, all of these things. It's just one little lesson that I think really, really helps your entire life. It's not just about shooting a lower score.
100%. And I think a lot of people find especially in their later years, you're like, hey, golf's my thing. I think people find their identity in that. And I did for a really, 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 really long time. I was known as, oh, Colton's the golf. He's really good at golf. He's the golf guy. And it was never about he's a good dude or like he's a bad dude or whatever. It was always just around like, oh, Colton's really good at golf. Colton's really good at golf. And I think when you get to that age where it's like that's all you have left, you put so much energy and passion into getting better at the game that you kind of lose sight as far as like kind of like you said, like you start to lose sight of like actually what's important. And being more stressed out at something you just love with a passion is just like, seems like you're burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah, there's no sense in that, right? And that's one of the most depressing things I see is when I see a video of someone like, I'm going to quit my job and play golf every day till I break scratch. And it's like, that's beside the point, right? Like shooting better is a good goal. It's a worthy goal. You will do it if you actually like go towards it. But when you wrap your entire identity in a score or something like simple like that, I think you've lost sight of the bigger picture. And that's sort of what you're offering is like the bigger picture to this thing.
Yeah,
you know? You're not just a golf coach. You're not just a fitness coach. Right. It's like a big picture.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the stock market, right? Like you can't predict whether it's going to go up 500% or it's going to go down 500%, right? Like you have to take what the market gives you. Like, so when you start playing around a golf, you're like, I'm shooting 79 today. It's like you already have an emotional attachment to
that's
a
like
score.
saying the market's going to go up today. You don't know.
You have absolutely no idea. So it's like, we don't have to get into market stuff, but we could talk about market stuff. But like when it comes down to that, like you have to take the emotion out of it and just take what your game gives you. So like as an example, if you're like, you normally hit a draw, today you're warming up on the range, you hit a fade. All right, you guess you're playing a fade the rest of your day. Like I fought it for years and it's like, it's so not worth it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing though, like you do one of these drills, that's what I kind of did was I started doing a drill you gave me in the spring. Golf courses weren't open.
Yeah.
I did it for a month or two. I went out on the first round of the year on the driving range and it was like, oh, I'm hitting a draw?
Yeah.
What? Because I showed up that day hitting the shot shape that I wanted to do. It's not showing up that day and willing the draw into existence. Right. It's that you go out 5 days a week before that for 5-10 minutes, you work on it, and then you'll go out and then it just happens. It's easy. You're not trying to force it.
But also keep in mind what you just said. It's like I spent 1 to 2 months doing the same drill.
One drill.
Not
a lot.
Not a lot. But a lot of people, and even my clients as well, they're like, they do it for a week and they're like, okay, what's next? Nothing is next. You're doing it again. Like, don't tell me, not what's next. It's like, you need to do this drill for probably a few months in order to see, because it's not even like, oh, I start to see change. It's like now I start to see sustainable change.
Right.
And I know that there's some tour players. It's like, oh, well, if you don't see change right away, then stop what you're doing. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, that's, I think, take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that because it does, like, and those players are very, very good ball strikers and they spend 90% of their day hitting golf balls.
Yeah, that's where if your game is at its peak, you're winning majors, and it's like you want to be very careful not to tweak your swing. If it doesn't improve your swing right away, I think that's good advice for them.
I agree.
But I think if you're a player who wants to really make huge improvements on your game, you're not like a super low handicap yet. There's a saying that's like, the poor player is going to try 1,000 things one time, whereas the great player, they're going to do one thing 1,000 times, right? It's very few fundamentals, and I think you'll see the best players in the world, they have like a couple fundamentals that they work on
consistently all the time.
They just do all the time. Like what does Tiger hit, 1,000 touches a day, I think he said when he was getting ready for majors. It's not trying to learn some crazy new thing. He's not doing 100 different drills or 1,000 different ways to swing the club. He's going and hitting 500 wedge shots, and he's thinking about one thing probably when he's doing
100%. And I think that's a huge takeaway to kind of end the show today is you don't need to do 5 or 6 different drills every single week or change everything up every single week. It's just like do one thing for a month, and then if you don't see an improvement, then we start talking about something different. Yeah. But hope you guys got some value to this chat. As always, if you guys are stuck around for the rest of the segment, obviously smash the subscribe button, leave a comment of what you guys want to see next. And as always, stay fast, and we'll see you for the next one.